This happened last month. I was working on the MV Discovery, a research vessel anchored off a remote island. I thought I knew the ocean well. Deep-sea expeditions were my passion, so when I got this chance, I felt excited. The ship sat still, surrounded by dark water, as the sun sank below the horizon. Every day, I analyzed sonar data. It was mostly routine, but one morning, I saw something odd. A massive structure rose from the ocean floor. My heart raced. I rushed to gather the team. "Look at this," I said. They shrugged it off. "Just a glitch," they laughed. I wanted to argue, but doubt crept in. Maybe they were right. As days passed, things grew strange on the ship. Equipment malfunctioned. I often heard creaking sounds of metal at night. It felt wrong. Then crew members began disappearing for hours. When they returned, they seemed vacant. I felt a chill in my bones. The weather changed too. First, it was just a drizzle. Then, heavy winds tossed the ship. I kept thinking about that sonar reading. Was it connected? I had nightmares. I saw the structure in the dark water, swirling and shifting. I often woke up gasping, terrified. One night, I stepped out on the deck. I hoped to calm my nerves. The wind howled, and I could see the island's silhouette in the moonlight. That's when I saw Theo, one of the interns. He stood by the railing, staring into the water. I called to him, but he didn't respond. When he finally turned, his eyes looked wild. "You have to see it," he whispered. My heart pounded. He pointed at the water. I thought I saw something massive moving beneath the surface. My skin crawled. I hesitated. Maybe it was just a trick of the light. Perhaps my mind was playing games with me. More crew gathered around us. Their whispers filled the air. They shot glances my way, judging me. I felt their eyes on me, heavy with questions. I wanted to scream out, to share my fear, but the words wouldn't come. I was lost in that moment. Then came a deep rumble. The ship shook violently. I could hardly breathe. I turned back to the ocean. My heart raced. I thought I caught a glimpse of shadowy movement below the surface. What was it? I had to find out. As I took a step closer, I felt a sudden tug on my sleeve. I spun around, but there was nobody there. My heart sank. I looked back at the water, unsure of what I had seen. Maybe it was nothing, but deep down, I felt the weight of a secret. The crew stood there, eyes wide, as if waiting for something to happen. I couldn't shake off the feeling that the ocean held something dark and ancient beneath the waves. They all seemed mesmerized, while I felt a creeping sense of dread. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The tug at my sleeve buzzed in my mind. I had to know what hid beneath the depths, even if that meant stepping closer to the unknown. The night wore on, and I couldn't shake the tight knot in my stomach. The crew slowly dispersed, still whispering among themselves, but leaving me standing at the railing. The water lapped softly, but it felt like the ocean was alive, breathing. I turned back toward the island's silhouette, hoping for relief, but found nothing but shadows. That I went back inside to check the sonar data again. Maybe there was something I missed. Maybe a deeper analysis would jog my memory. I sat at the console, staring at the screen as the images flashed before me. Each one pulsed with the echo of what I believed to be the structure and anomaly in the depths. Then, I noticed it. A few meters away from the initial reading, a different formation appeared. Smaller, but equally unnerving. I leaned closer, squinting at the screen. There was a distinct outline, jagged and unnatural. It looked like a series of interlocking shapes. I swallowed hard. Was this another part of the structure? Something nearby that explained the disturbances? My fingers drifted over the keyboard, running comparative scans with nearby sonar data, anxious to validate my findings. As I worked, I heard footsteps approach. It was Theo, his expression still haunted, eyes wide. "Did you see it up close?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. My heart raced again. "What are you talking about?" I replied. "The structure," he pressed. It's changing." I went back to look again. "It's moving." I felt a surge of panic. "Theo, I need you to be clear." "What do you mean, moving?" "It's like it's alive." "I swear it was different from before," he insisted, glancing back toward the deck as if someone might be listening. I took a deep breath, trying to focus. "Let us go back outside," I suggested. My mind raced with worry. If it were alive, what did that mean? What were we dealing with? We climbed back onto the deck. The wind had picked up, and the waves thrashed against the hull. I pulled my jacket tight as we peered into the darkness, searching the water's surface. It felt like time had stopped. Then, I saw it something massive just beneath the surface, thrumming like a heartbeat, if responding to my gaze. The shadow shifted, breaking through the water. It was darker than the blackest night, slick and serpentine. My heart stopped. Before I could process what I was witnessing, the shape was gone, swallowed by the darkness again. What was that? Theo gasped, gripping the railing tightly. I don't know, I stammered. But we need to warn the others. They have to pull back. Just then, a loud, grinding sound echoed through the ship. It was like metal had been twisted under immense pressure. Maybe we shouldn't be out here, Theo said, starting to back away. But before I could respond, the lights flickered, and the world around us plunged into darkness. The ship groaned, and everything felt off balance. My instincts kicked in. We needed to get everyone on deck. I turned to Theo. We have to find them. Now. Then, I heard a strange sound, a low hum, vibrating through the air. It seemed to be coming from beneath us. Something was awake, and it was searching for something. The alarm bells in my head blared as the sense of urgency washed over me that I struggled to keep my voice steady. Let us go, I yelled as we dashed into the shadows, uncertainty buzzing around us like a storm. Whatever was down there, it was closer than I thought, and time was slipping away. Theo and I hurried down the corridor, our footsteps echoing in the empty spaces of the ship. The air felt heavy with dread. I could still hear that strange hum vibrating through the metal. It was both unsettling and captivating. I gripped the railing as we descended the stairs to the crew quarters. Theo, do you think they heard that noise? I asked, anxiety creeping into my voice. Let us hope so, he replied, his face pale. If they didn't, we need to make them listen. We reached the common area. The lights flickered back on, but they buzzed in an unnatural way. The crew was scattered, some sitting, others pacing. Their hushed conversations halted when they saw us. What is going on? Claire, one of the biologists, asked, her brow knitted in concern. There's something in the water, I said, trying to steady my breathing. Theo saw it move. We need to get away from here. Move? Away? Shouted Tom, the captain. What are you talking about? We didn't come all this way just to turn back now. It's not safe. I pleaded, urgency rising in my voice. There is something down there. I can't explain it, but it's not just rock or metal. It's alive. The room fell silent. I could see doubt and fear flickering in their eyes. We'll check the sonar again, Tom said reluctantly, crossing his arms. If there's a threat, we need to know for sure. While Tom played with the controls, the hum grew louder, almost pulsating. I felt it tingling at the base of my skull. It was as if the ship itself was responding to something below. My heart raced again. What was happening? Suddenly, the lights went out a second time, plunging us back into darkness. The growl of the ship under pressure seemed to intensify. Gasps erupted around me, and I struggled to keep calm. Stay together, I shouted, but my voice sounded small against the chaos. Before I knew it, Tom's voice cut through the obscurity. The sonar reads multiple shapes surrounding us, he announced. What the hell is happening? That's when I felt it, a thrumming energy beneath my feet. It was like the ship was vibrating to some unseen rhythm. I lost my balance, falling against a wall. Theo grabbed my arm, steadying me, but the fear in his eyes matched my own. Everyone back? Tom barked. We need to. A blinding flare of light surged from below the ship, illuminating the entire common area. My breath caught in my throat. Beneath the hull, strange shapes were breaking through the surface, emitting a ghostly glow. They twisted and pulsed, weaving around each other in a dance that defied logic. What in the world is that? Claire said, her voice trembling. Then, out of the light and shadows, a massive form surfaced, arching out of the water. It was long and sleek, glistening with colors that seemed to shift and change. My heart raced. Retreat. Now. Tom shouted that it was too late. The creature lunged toward us, its size dwarfing the ship. All I could do was scream as the reality of our situation sank into my bones. We were no longer alone. And whatever that was, it was coming for us. Panic swelled in my chest as the creature surged closer. The lights flickered again, and for an instant, I could see its vast, undulating body clearly, a slick surface, covered in shimmering scales that reflected the light like shards of glass. Tom, I shouted, do something. But it was as if we were all frozen in place, our collective fear binding us in that moment. Get to the bridge, Tom shouted, breaking the trance. We need to gain control. I glanced at Theo, who looked paralyzed by disbelief. I grabbed his arm, dragging him toward the exit. We have to go now? The creature lunged again, crashing against the hull. The ship shuddered violently, and I stumbled. Just ahead, a few crew members screamed, scattering like leaves caught in a storm. We dashed toward the bridge, making our way through the chaos. I could hear Tom shouting orders behind us, but the urgency of our flight drowned out the words. My heart pounded as I glanced back one last time. The luminous creature was now fully revealing itself, its sleek form undulating, eyes glimmering like stars in a dark sky. Once we reached the bridge, I slammed the door shut behind us, gasping for air. The room was filled with blinking lights and screens flashing warnings. Tom was frantically flipping switches and peering at the sonar display. I could see it too, a chaotic flurry of shapes surrounding our ship. Theo leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. "What do we do?" he whispered, his voice shaking. "We need to get us out of here," Tom replied, the lines on his forehead deepening as he worked the controls. "But I can't get our engines online." The impact, he trailed off, shaking his head in disbelief. It was as if the creature had disrupted more than just our calm. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. What if it didn't want us to leave? What if it was angry? I clutched Theo's arm tighter, feeling his pulse beneath my fingers. "Check the communications," I blurted out. "We need to call for help." Tom turned to another console, and when he spoke, his voice was taut. "No signal. We're cut off." That S when I heard it again, a low, resonant hum. But this time, it was accompanied by a rhythmic pattern that seemed to match the heartbeat of the creature. The noise pulsed through the metal of the ship, a contradiction to the chaos. "What is happening?" Theo asked, his eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," I admitted. "But it feels almost like it's trying to communicate." Before I could process my thought, the ship jolted violently again. Warning sirens blared. "Brace for impact," Tom shouted, grabbing the controls with white-knuckled hands. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered out, plunging us into a suffocating silence. My breath caught in my throat. I felt my heart race, and then I heard it. A whisper in the dark, a deep, sonorous voice echoing through the ship. Awake, what did it mean? The terror now took on a new dimension. Was it talking to us or something else? All I knew was that whatever was in the water didn't plan on letting us go. And that realization sent a wave of icy dread crashing over me. I fumbled in the darkness, trying to steady my breathing. The echo of that single word, awake, reverberated in my mind. Had it spoken to me? Or had I merely imagined it? "Tom," I whispered, desperate and unsure. There was no response, just the oppressive silence hanging thick in the air. "Can you get the lights back on?" His voice broke, the sound muffled as if traveling through water. "I'm on it." A faint flicker sputtered to life, illuminating the bridge in a ghostly glow. I could see the worried expression on Tom's face, sweat glistening on his brow. I turned to Theo, whose eyes were wide, reflecting a mix of fear and disbelief. "I don't think it's done with us," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hold on," Tom shouted suddenly. "I think I'm getting a reading." The screens blinked erratically, finally stabilizing. A series of blips appeared on the sonar, growing closer with each passing second. I leaned over Tom's shoulder, my heart racing. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means it's still here." Just then, the ship shuddered again, more violently this time. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the console. Boy, did it feel like we were in the belly of some leviathan. "We can't just sit here," I urged. "What if it tries to capsize us?" Tom shook his head, confusion mixing with fear. If I could just before he could finish, the lights flickered again, revealing something massive just beneath us. Dark shapes swirled, inching closer to the hull. They weren't just echoes from the creature. There were more flashes of something glimmering and serpentine in the water below. Another voice broke the tension. This one was filled with assertiveness. "We can't stay here. What do we do?" Theo's voice trembled as he searched the room for answers. "I have an idea." I didn't know where the words came from, but they felt instinctual. "If it's communicating, maybe we should try to answer back." Tom shot me a skeptical look. "Do you have any idea how to do that? It's not like we can talk to it." The humming persisted, now louder and more insistent. I closed my eyes, trying to focus on the rhythm, the pulse. The idea was reckless, but desperation clawed at me. Let us try sending a signal. Maybe we can match its frequency. Maybe it will respond. Okay, but you better be right, Tom said. He started turning knobs and typing quickly, his fingers flying across the screen. The room filled with an unsettling resonance, vibrating through the floor like the heartbeat of something enormous. I held my breath as we sent out our signal. Then came the response, a powerful surge that shook the ship more violently than before, throwing me against the control panel. Just as I began to grasp what was happening, a shadow loomed outside the bridge's windows. Something much larger than the already gigantic creature hovered beneath us, rising toward the surface. I felt the chill of dread wash over me. That's when I saw it. An enormous silhouette, blocking out the faint light of the stars, an entity rising, and it was way more than we could handle. What had we awakened? I felt my heart race as the enormous shape continued to ascend. It loomed larger and larger in the dim light of the bridge, the contours shifting ominously beneath the water. I struggled to comprehend what I was seeing. Tom, what is that? I barely managed to choke out. I don't know, he said, his voice trembling now. He was glued to the controls, fighting to maintain some semblance of control. Theo's eyes darted between the screens and the windows, panic creeping into his expression. Shouldn't we be moving away from it? Before I could respond, the ship jerked again, this time much more violently. I stumbled, and the sound of metal creaking tore through the air. I grabbed onto the edge of the console, my knuckles white with tension. I'm trying to stabilize us, Tom shouted, frantically working to regain control. Hold on. But as he struggled, the water outside swirled and churned, and then it happened. A massive, scaled head breached the surface. It was an astonishing sight, glossy dark green skin glistening under the faint glow of the bridge lights. I gasped, but that was just the beginning. More flashes of bioluminescence flickered alongside the beast, illuminating an entire array of what seemed like tendrils flowing off the creature like ribbons in water. So beautiful, Theo whispered, but the awe faded quickly as the reality set in. This creature wasn't here to play. Beautiful doesn't mean safe, I said sharply. We have to. Before I could finish, a forceful thud hit the side of the ship, causing another violent tremor. We were losing control. Something is disturbing its territory, Tom said, his fingers racing across the console. If we can't get away, we need to study it somehow. Study it? I shot back, disbelief washing over me. Are you kidding? We're not marine biologists. We're just trying to survive. I know, but if we can find a way to communicate. He was cut off by another resounding bang. The large head disappeared below the surface once more, and I exhaled, momentarily relieved. But my relief was short-lived as the sonar screeched with a new reading. Something was closing in fast. Tom, we've got more blips. I pointed to the monitor, dread creeping back in. It's not just one. He squinted at the screen, his face paling. How many? I can't tell. I frantically pressed a few buttons, trying to get a clearer picture. The numbers started to climb rapidly. At least a dozen, maybe more. Theo's hands shook at his sides. We're surrounded. The lights flickered again, and the atmosphere thickened with tension. Brace yourselves, Tom shouted as the ship began to rock more intensely. What is happening? Theo cried, fear flooding his voice that I could only stare as I realized the truth. We had stirred a hive of these colossal creatures. What had been a simple exploration had turned into something far more dangerous. As I watched the shadows moving swiftly in the dark waters, a horrible thought occurred to me. What if we weren't meant to leave at all? The moment I saw the screens filled with blips, panic rose in my chest like water filling a sinking ship. We were surrounded. My mind raced. I felt trapped, like a fly caught in a web. Tom, we need to get out of here, I shouted over the chaos in the cabin. He was still glued to the controls. I'm trying. The engines won't respond. I glanced at Theo. His face was pale, drawn tight with fear. What do we do? Just keep sitting here? Look. I pointed to the sonar display. Those shadowy figures were moving closer. They weren't just circling us. They were getting ready to strike. Do we get the emergency lights on? Theo suggested, his voice shaky. The emergency lights? I echoed, feeling dizzy. We need to get away. But before I could add anything, another colossal thud hit the ship, this time even harder. I staggered back, slamming into the control panel. Tom cursed as he fought for balance. It's like they know we're here. Maybe they think we're a threat. I yelled, grasping at any explanation that made sense. The screen flickered, and then a harrowing image surged into view. dozens of those massive shapes now visible in the murky depths. They were closer than I thought, a swirling mass of scales and glowing tendrils. I don't want to be their dinner, Theo shouted, eyes wide with terror. Shut up and help me. Tom snapped as he slammed a button. The engines pinged, but didn't respond. My heart sank. Then I remembered the emergency protocols. Tom, the emergency escape. Can we activate it? He glanced at me, hesitancy flashing across his face. It's meant for total power failure, not for giant sea monsters. I finished for him, panic rising. No. We have to try? Get us out of here. Tom's fingers flew across the controls again. I gripped the edge of the console, waiting for whatever was about to happen. Suddenly, the ship lurched. It was a desperate move that sent adrenaline coursing through me. We shot forward into the murky water, trying to break free of the beasts that threatened to engulf us. But then a flash of bright bioluminescence surrounded us, illuminating thousands of scales just inches from our hull. They were so close I could almost see the tiny movements of their gills. Are they communicating? Theo wondered aloud, eyes wide. I could only shake my head, caught between fear and curiosity. Tom, their movements. Are they signaling us? I don't know, he said, struggling to maneuver the ship. What do you want me to do? That's when I saw something dart toward us from the depths, a massive form, larger than the others. It surged up, cutting through the water with terrifying speed. And suddenly, everything went dark. I felt a jolt as the darkness swallowed the cabin. First, it was completely quiet, but then the low rumble of water pressed against the hull. My heart raced as I blinked, trying to adjust to the absence of light. Tom, I shouted, but my voice sounded muffled, as if the walls had absorbed the sound. Panic crept back in. What just happened? Hang on, he yelled back, his tone filled with urgency. I could barely make out his figure, silhouetted against the dim emergency lights that pulsed on the edges of the control panel. A moment later, the emergency system kicked in, dim light flooding the cabin again. My gaze shot to the sonar display. The blips were gone. It was just a flat line. What do you see? I asked Theo, whose expression mirrored my rising dread. Nothing. It's like they just vanished. His voice trembled. Maybe they swam away, I suggested, though I didn't believe my own words. Tom furiously tapped buttons on the console, but the engines remained stubbornly silent. I can't get any power, he muttered, frustration spilling into his actions. Then I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a subtle movement behind the viewing port. I turned just as a massive shadow drifted past, blocking the faint light filtering through the water. My heart dropped. What was that? I whispered, barely able to keep my voice steady. Before Tom could answer, the ship vibrated sharply, a violent crash shaking us to our cores. The emergency alarms blared, flashing red lights now dominating the cabin. Hold on, Tom yelled. He grabbed hold of the console as it jolted again. We're taking damage. I turned back to the viewing port, squinting into the murk. The shape was larger now, rapidly approaching. It wasn't just swimming, it was charging at us. Get us out, I screamed, panic clawing at my throat. Please. Working on it. Tom gritted his teeth. I could see the strain on his face. Just then, the console lit up with a message. Hull integrity compromised. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? Theo stammered, but I didn't have an answer. Shut the pressure doors, I shouted instinctively, remembering our training. Seal off the damaged area. Tom nodded and pressed a button, sealing the inner doors just as another impact rocked the vessel. Then the lights flickered. I felt a wave of ice-cold water seep through the seams of the ship. It was clear we were not just under attack. We were being hunted. Look, Theo gasped, pointing. I followed his finger to the viewing port. The dark silhouette was now impossibly close, and I could make out its shape. A massive creature with tentacle-like appendages and shimmering scales that seemed to dance in the faint light that my breath caught. What is that? As if in response, the creature emitted a deep, resonating sound that resonated through the hull. It felt like a warning, and I knew we were running out of time. Tom, we need to get out. Now, I shouted, desperate. But just as he was about to answer, the alarms cut off, and the emergency lights dimmed again, plunging us back into the cold darkness. Then, from the depths outside, a piercing set of bright eyes locked onto us, and the creature lunged forward again. That's when everything changed. I blinked hard against the darkness, trying to make sense of the sudden silence. The alarms had ceased, but it felt wrong, too quiet. As I adjusted to the dim ambience, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was outside was still out there, watching. "Tom," I called, inching closer to the console. "Can you see anything?" His fingers were working on the control panel, but he shook his head. "No power to the scanners. It's like the whole ship is dead." He glanced at me, worry etched on his face. "I think we're trapped." Panic began to bubble again in my chest. I forced myself to breathe slowly. "What do we do?" I asked, looking toward Theo. He was pale, but trying to sound brave. "We need to check the back of the ship," Theo suggested, his voice shaky. "There might be something we can manually reset." Tom nodded, gesturing toward the darkened hallway that led to the outer sections. "Let us move. Stay close. We can't get separated." The sound of our hurried footsteps echoed in the narrow corridor. I felt the chill of seawater pressing in, but it mixed with a heavier dread that hung in the air. Every shadow seemed alive, and the pressure of the ocean felt more oppressive with each step. As we neared the rear of the boat, a low growl reverberated through the walls. I stopped, the noise rattling my nerves. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Tom and Theo exchanged glances. "Yeah," Tom said. "Let us hurry." We reached a maintenance room, its door barely ajar. I pushed it open cautiously, the hinges squealing as if in protest. The faint glow from our flashlights caught sight of tools and equipment scattered haphazardly around the cramped space. "What is supposed to be in here?" Theo asked, rifling through things as Tom checked the control panel against the wall. "Just basic tools, emergency backup systems, and a few spare parts," Tom said, not taking his eyes off the display. My pulse quickened. I wondered if any of it would help us escape. The growl rumbled again, closer this time. I felt trapped, not just in the ship but in the dread of what lingered outside. Then I noticed something glimmering in a corner. I stepped toward it, careful not to disturb anything else. It was a small device, an emergency beacon. I picked it up, hopeful. "Do you think this could work?" Tom turned to look at the device. "We can give it a shot, but I'm not sure it will have enough power." Before he could finish, the lights flickered again, casting large shadows across the walls. I felt a rush of air and heard an unmistakable thud against the hull. "What was that?" Theo blurted, eyes wide. "I don't know, but it doesn't sound good," I replied, my voice just above a whisper. Tom pushed me back toward the door. "We have to go. Now." But just as we turned, the maintenance room door slammed shut on its own, trapping us inside. The panic surged again. I rattled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "Tom, what do we do?" I yelled, my heart racing. That's when I saw the shadows gather around the edges of the room, morphing into something more. Something alive. The air crackled with an intensity that felt alive, as if whatever was lurking outside had sensed our fear and was responding to it. I turned to Theo, fear etched on his face, while Tom pounded on the door, shouting for it to open. But the door was unyielding, seemingly done with our pleas. "Get back," I shouted, pushing Theo toward the far corner of the room just as the shadows coalesced into shapes. My heart pounded as I felt the heavy weight of eyes on us watching, waiting. We backed away, but my mind raced with thoughts of escape. "Maybe there's another way out," Theo suggested, his voice trembling but urgency flickering in his eyes. Tom continued to hammer on the door, desperation fueling his strength. As he stepped back, breathing heavily, I could see a flicker of panic in his gaze. "If we can find the backup power switch, we might get enough juice to open this door," he said, and I caught a hint of hope that I glanced around the room, my flashlight beam catching the outlines of tools, heavy-duty cables, and equipment scattered across the floor. "That must be where the systems are." I pointed toward the panel behind a stack of crates. We dashed over and began rifling through everything, hoping to find something viable. The rumble of the creature outside echoed through the metal hull of the ship. Each thud felt like a death knell, and my stomach churned. Tom was running out. "Here," Theo shouted, pulling a thick cable free from underneath a pile of debris. "Any idea how to hook this up?" "No," Tom exclaimed, frustration bleeding into his voice. "I need to see the schematics. Hand me that flashlight." I passed it to him, and he turned toward a faded diagram taped to the wall. "Let us try to route it to the emergency systems." I could feel the energy shift in the room, a palpable tension swelling from the shadows. It was taunting us, a reminder of the impending doom. As Tom and Theo worked quickly, I turned back toward the door, willing it to open somehow. I could feel our fate closing in around us. Just as my anxiety reached a crescendo, the growling returned, louder this time, more insistent. It felt closer, almost intimate. Then, without warning, the door jolted again. A crack appeared, light seeping through. "I think I can get it," Tom shouted, and he gripped the edge of the panel, wrenching it open with a great heave. The door lurched backward, and I felt a rush of air. "Go," I yelled, leading the way as we poured into the corridor. The bowels of the ship felt like a maze, the walls vibrating with the ferocity of the creature outside. I looked back toward the maintenance room, half expecting to see the shadows lunge forward, but it was just darkness everywhere. "What next?" Theo exclaimed as we ran into another hallway, the ground underneath shaking with another impact. "We need to reach the bridge," Tom shouted ahead of us. "It's our best shot at getting a signal out." We raced toward the front of the ship, adrenaline surging through us. My thoughts flickered to the creature and its possible motives: anger, confusion, or something else. The line between what was real and what was imagined blurred more by the second. Questions danced in my head. What awakened it? What was it sending out? More importantly, would we ever escape the depths? As we burst onto the bridge, I felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The holographic displays blinked erratically, barely illuminating the space, but I could see Tom already fumbling with the controls, frustration etched on his brow. "Re-establishing communication. I just need a moment," he mumbled, but the rest was drowned out by a deafening crash reverberating through the floor. No time for hesitation. Before I could think, I ran to the console beside him and pulled up the emergency beacon. "Send out a distress signal." "No time," he shouted, eyes darting. "The console S2 unstable." "What do we do?" Theo whispered, teetering on the brink of panic. The thick silence enveloped us again, interrupted only by the ominous sound of something slithering just beneath the hull, something colossal. Whatever sent us down here was waiting for us to make the next move. My heart raced as I turned toward the small porthole that overlooked the abyss. "ISNT, there's something we can do," I pleaded, as shadows started swirling outside the window, curling into the dark water like dark ribbons. Tom's fingers hovered over the console. I could suddenly. The ship shuddered violently, throwing me off balance. An explosion of bioluminescence flooded the space, illuminating everything and revealing feathered tentacles dancing just beneath the surface. A drowning wave of scales crashing against the hull that I felt dread wash over me, as that same voice echoed back inside my head. Awake, Tom struggled to raise the emergency power, but something felt sinister about the pressure we were under. "I can't, it's too much. We need to go now, or what?" I shouted, but deep down I knew. Whatever was outside was vast, an ancient terror lingering in the dark. Just as the darkness swelled, drowning out the warnings and alarms, I glanced out again, and this time, my eyes caught a glimpse of something monstrous rising among the bioluminescence, the specter of a creature stirred by more than our presence. There, looming beneath the waves, dark and magnificent, it understood it was awakening to AT that moment. I understood the haunting truth. We were both the hunters and the hunted, bound by our own thirst for discovery. We had ignited something that had always belonged to the depths. Time raced ahead of us as we rode a knife edge of survival. And as we embraced the unknown, I couldn't shake the feeling that even if we escaped, the ocean would continue to whisper our secrets back home. We took a deep breath, not knowing what tomorrow would bring, as the world around us shuddered in anticipation, an unclear boundary between survival and consequence. I still think about that night sometimes. I never went back out to sea after that. Did we awaken something incomprehensible, or did we stumble into a world we were never meant to discover? Those questions linger as shadows beneath the waves. I guess I'll never know.